Alright, so continuing where we left off, we now have the application to where we run it from the last videos. We haven't started the start button yet, but we have the instructions, and we can open and close that. And then we also have an exit, which exits the game. So now let's go ahead and start creating the actual game itself. And in order to do that, we have to load in the game screen. So here is the game screen. I at least want to load that in before I start the algorithm of putting the boxes or the cards inside of there. So I'm going to go ahead and generate a game screen or instantiate a game screen by going up here and dimming a game screen. And I think I'll call that game screen. And it's going to be the same as what we did before. Go down here. This game screen will be down here as a new game screen. And then when the button is clicked, right here, when the start screen button is clicked, we already did the event handler the last video. When that's clicked, the first thing I want to do is remove. So I'm going to go to this main canvas that we have and the children, and I want to not add, I want to remove. And what do I want to remove? I want to remove what was there initially. If you look over here on the start screen, we added not the instructions, but we added the start screen itself. We added that start screen here in the start game. So when the game starts, we added this start screen. So now we just want to remove that start screen. When we remove the start screen, we then want to go ahead and we want to add, and we want to add the game. We want to add the game screen. Okay, so let's see if that works. Hit play. That works, yes. Exit works, okay. Just like to make sure I didn't screw anything up, and then I hit the start screen, and here's our start screen. So that's perfect. Now what we need to do is start our algorithm of adding our buttons and stuff like that. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to create a class that will be a button, but it'll be a different kind of button. So it'll be a button that has images, let's say. So now all I need to do is go over here and add, and I want not a user control, but I want a class. And that class we're going to call cards, or just a card. So it's an object, it's a card. And when it comes to the card, the first thing we want to do is inherit from buttons, because a card will be a button. So we're going to inherit the, so we type inherits, and we're going to inherit the buttons. Okay, so then we want a button to have an image name. So we're going to say it's going to be a public. We're not going to go too deep into object-oriented programming by encapsulating this to where nothing can have access to it. So we're just going to add this called this image. This image name. We want to have access to the name, and that's as a string. And then we're going to want whether it's selected or not. Maybe not. We'll figure out whether we need this button to know whether it was selected or not. But for right now, we're going to leave that, and we're going to create two constructors. We're going to type here this name equals to nothing. And then we're going to need another routine for this card. A constructor. We're going to need another constructor that takes in a main window. then we're going to need another constructor here that then takes in the image name in case we want to set the image name. That will be as a string. Okay. And then in here, we want to be able to set that image. We're going to take the image name inside of here, and this button will hold that image. It's going to take this image name and is going to find the image inside of our resources here. And then once it does that, it's going to add that to this card. So the way we do that in VB, first we're going to dim a button, just a generic button as a new, I'm sorry, not a button. We want that to be a bitmap image. And so that's going to be as a new bitmap. And it's going to be a bitmap image. And then we're going to give that a new URI, and that URI will be of the type that we had written before. For instance, if I go to my images, you'll see, not in there, oh, where is it? Right here. So here's an image, and you'll see it says resources / Simpson's daycare.jpg, right? So I want that to be how this URI will be written. So if I were to put that in there like so, that will pull up that image. But what I want to be able to do is change it to where this image is replaced with this part right here and everything else remains the same. So the way I can do that is put two quotes there and put two concatenating elements there, and then put the image name right in between all of that. Now that I have that, I want to go ahead and, oh, there's one more element that I have to put here, one more argument that goes here. And it's the URI kind, and then we're going to make that relative to the project. Okay, so now I'm going to take an image. I'm going to create an image variable, img, and as a new image. And then I want to go ahead and take the source of this image and declare it to be the bitmap. And then we want to go ahead, remember how when we added this image it wasn't completely stretched out, we had to put stretched down here, so we had to do fill. So what I'm going to do is the same thing here. I'm going to say img dot stretched, and the dot stretch will equals stretch dot fill. And then I want to take the content and I'm going to make that as an image. This is just one of many ways to do it. Alright, so now our card right here, our card can take in an image name, and it can process that image and add that image to the card, and then it also we can create a card without adding a name. Now the reason why we did this is because some images are going to have the image we want the viewer to see but not click, and some images will have images that we want them to be able to click. So we're just giving ourselves some leeway here. Okay, so let's move forward from here. So in our game screen, let's go look at our game screen. User control. In the game screen, user control is where everything's going to take place for the game itself. So I'm going to go ahead and type out all of the variables that we need here initially, and then I'm going to replay the video. So I'm going to pause it for a second and type that out. Alright, so here are all the variables I believe we're going to need. And we have a few constants up here. The card height and width, we're going to set all that. And then the points to be added. And then we have this bitmap image list. And all of these list out 2 of every kind. So all I did was went into the resources. I looked at the names here. As you can see, they have their names down here with the .jpeg. And I just take this name and I'll put it in here depending on which name I'm going to use. I put it in here in quotes. And so I'm making a list of all those names so I can filter through those names and remove them as I select a name, because what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to create these cards and have them randomly generate. We don't want the card to always be in the same spot, because that's not a fun game at all. You would always pass the first level. So we're going to randomly place the cards. So if that is the case, then I need this random generator right here. And then we're going to have a button, which is the card. We're going to have a question button, which is also a card, but it's going to be a question mark. We have the first clicked, which is a card, and the second click, which is a card. Remember the card type we created over here, right? And then we have a timer dispatcher. Now I left it this way until I started it up again because I need to import some classes here. So you see that red? I'm going to click over it, and then I'll get that little light bulb, and then I can just go ahead and import Windows threads, or I could have just typed it up here above the class declaration. Now you see there's no more red line there. And then I have my points. Okay, so points to be added and points are 2 different things. This is constantly being added. This cannot be changed because that's a constant. So now inside of our game screen, we're going to need our game screen when it's created over here in the main window. We're going to need our game screen to take in the main window. And the reason why I say that, because we need the game screen to be able to access things inside the main window. So we're going to instantiate the main screen with its sub new, but we're also going to say new main. Yeah, we're going to call that a new main, and it's going to be of a main window type. So this is what we want it to be. Now, after I did that, I should get an error in this one, because when I created my game screen, I never gave it the main window. And so there should be an error. Yeah, so this is an error because I'm instantiating this new game screen and it's expecting this variable to be in there. So all I got to do here is put me. Okay, so that means this window will go inside of here, and then we have access to it in here. Okay, so now what I want to be able to do is take my main screen. I don't have a main screen variable up here. So I need another variable up here. Private main as main window. So now when this runs, I can now say, and this can be done at any time. You know, this is one thing that can be done before the initialization. It really doesn't matter at this point, so because it's not anything visual. So I can say that that my main screen will equal whatever new main that I throw inside of there, which is completely legitimate. Now what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to add my buttons to a grid, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a procedure to do that for me. I don't want to put all of this in this the main you know, the main routine here. So I'm going to create a subroutine. I'm going to say add buttons to grid. Yeah, that's a good name. And then what I'm going to do is I want this to be able to accept a certain number of buttons in case the next level requires 10 buttons instead of 6 or 9 or whatever. So I'm going to utilize this card count right here inside of this one, so that way I have 6 here. I can change that number at any time. So I'm going to go ahead and create that method, and right here you can see it created the arguments for me. it changed this argument to be a little bit different from there because this is a constant, and so it didn't want it to look like a constant. So I'm gonna just call this something a little bit different. I'm gonna just call this the number. How about card count? There we go. Okay, so now when we look at this, where is it? So when we look at this, our grid, we have a grid that goes 1, 2, 3 across and 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So we're going to need an algorithm, or yeah, we're going to need an algorithm to go all the way across as the columns and then go down as the rows, and then only add the buttons in these two columns and rows right here. So that's pretty straightforwardly done with a for loop. So I'm just going to say for index equals 1 to 10, except I'm going to say 1 to 3 since I'm going 3 down. And then that's going to be, I'm going to change this. Instead of index, I'm just going to call this I as integer. And I'm going to add another for loop in here for j. I'm going to call this j as integer. And that one will be going from 0 to 1. 0 meaning the first one, and 1 meaning the second one. So inside of here, I want to add a note. This will set the buttons to row and okay, row and column. So now inside of here, I'm going to dim myself a new name. It's a string. Okay, and then I'm going to make that equals, because I need to name each one of these buttons. So every time a button comes, I need to name it or give it a name, and that's why inside of the card we did this name thing, so each card can have a unique name, so we can know if the same button was clicked or not. We talked about this in the first video. So I really need to make sure that each button in this loop has a unique name. So I'm going to use I. So it's going to be, the name of the button is going to be BTN I, whatever, you know, that'll be 1. And then I'm going to add an underscore. So it's going to be row, and then it's going to be column and J, like that. I'm going to encapsulate all of this, and I'm going to say to string just to be safe. And then I'm going to say make button. I want to make the buttons after this, so I have to create a make button because I don't want to add all of that inside of here. And the make button, oops, we'll take an I and a J. It's going to take the row and a column, and then it's going to use that new name to create the button. Alright, so now I just need to generate this. Here it is right here. And I just want to go ahead and change this to row and column. So I'm going to change this to row and change this one to column. And I can just change this to name. Alright, and so instead of seeing me type all this out, I'm going to go ahead and pause it really quick and then type it out and then come back. So basically what we have on this one now is we have the buttons. We create a button, that's a new button. Then we create another button, that's a question mark button. And then we created this new function over here, this procedure, sorry, that's going to take in a button, it's going to take in the width, it's going to take in the height, right? And then it's going to take the name of the new button. And so the first button that we created was the question mark button, and it'll go down here. So you got to create this one right here, this procedure, and that's going to take in the height, the width, the name, and it's just going to go ahead and add that to the button that you sent in. So that way we don't have all that written down here. And then we create the next button, which is this button. We go ahead and create that button. Then we add those buttons to this grid. And so as you can see, we add it to the grid anywhere on the grid. Then we place them on the grid. So you see this button is going into set button, which we haven't really placed the set button so much. It's just going to set it to this row, which is the integer value that we placed in here, and which is the value that's going in here. So remember the function that we wrote, the procedure we wrote over here, the algorithm we wrote over here to be able to place the buttons based off of these numbers. These numbers then go into this make button, which go in as a row and a column. Then it gives it to this set column, which goes in here. It takes in the object and it puts it at the column or the row. So first we set the buttons, then we set the quiz, and then we go ahead and add this random number generator here. So we say random.next, and the random.next takes in a number, and it will only do random between that number. So what we did was we took the button images count, which is this one right here, the number of items inside of this button images count. That's what the random number is going to be. So it's going to take a random number between that. So it's only going to take between what's actually there. Then it pulls the name out of this list up here. It pulls the names out of that list based off of the random number that was generated here. And then it brings back that name. So then we take this set matching cards, and what we're going to do is we're going to give that the button that we're selecting plus the name down here, and we're going to go ahead and set those to the matching cards. From there, we're going to go ahead and then place the question mark on top of all of those buttons. But then we're going to give both buttons, the question mark and the button beneath, the exact same name. So after we do all that, we remove the randomly selected button from the list that's up here. And that's pretty much the core of everything that we'll be doing, actually. And remember, all of this is happening inside of this loop, this for loop. So the only thing we need to do now is go ahead and program this set matching cards procedure here. So instead of having you sit here watch me type all this out, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and then type this part out right here. Okay, so now it looks like we have most of the things in order. Let's see if it actually works. So I'm going to run this. And I'm going to start, and it did. We have some stuff here. We probably have to reorganize this part over here, and then we're going to set the clicking event so that when you click it, it disappears. But at least we got things in order. And as a matter of fact, I can just go ahead and readjust the grid over here, and then we'll be okay. So all I need to do here is adjust this grid to the proper size. And then I'm going to save that, and let me try running it again. There we go. So now we have all of these things randomly generated, by the way. And keep in mind, there is a picture underneath these. All we got to do is when these are selected, we need to make them disappear. So let's go ahead and do that now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the button click whenever these buttons are clicked. So when these buttons were generated, over here, when we made these buttons, what we have to do is we have to go ahead and create also an event handler. And we can do that after all the buttons were generated. So after we do this remove part right here, I'm going to create an add handler event. I'm going to call that btn question, because we want the btn question.click to be able to be accessed. And address of, that's going to be, we're going to call that btn click, btn underscore click. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and generate that. Now if you notice here, let's see, okay, so I have this here. Now on the click, the first thing I want to do is, according to my documentation, when it's first clicked, the first thing that needs to happen is the cards need to flip over. Okay, so that's the first thing that needs to happen. Card needs to flip. So I'm just going to allow the visibility of this this card. Whatever card was clicked, I need to change the visibility of it. So I need to know whatever card was clicked. And the way I'm going to get what card was clicked is through the sender argument that's inside of the button click. So I'm going to dim myself a new clicked. This is the button that was clicked, or the card that was clicked. Click card as a card. And I'm going to proclaim that the sender is going to be a card type. And then I can say the clicked card, the visibility equals the hide. I want it to hide because remember that's the question mark card. Okay. So let me run that. That should work. There we go. So now I can click all of them. Now the next thing I need to be able to do is go ahead and continue adding the idea of which one was the first one clicked according to my documentation. Depending on the first and the second click, it will determine what actually happens on these cards. So I think what we can do is go right into this button click right here. So I need to stop the application. Right into this button click, and I'm going to go ahead and type if the first clicked is nothing, then the first click, because if there is no first clicked, and again here, if there is no first click, if first click is nothing, then flip the card, then the first click will equals the card that was clicked. Okay, so then that means that will be the clicked card, right? And then after that, I want to exit sub. I don't want anything else happening after this. So you just click that card and that's it. Now I'm going to do a test on this. I want to see the name, so I'm going to say console.writeLine. So I want to see the name of the card that's clicked, just so I can be sure of this first card clicked. Right. Dot, and remember we put this name thing in there so we can know the name of the card. And remember the name is based off of this right here. Alright, so let's see what happens now. Start it, click it, and let me go in the output, and there you see it. We have Lisa Simpson there. Lisa Simpson was clicked, right? So that's good. So now all we got to do, and remember I clicked these and you notice there's no other ones coming down here, because remember after I clicked this one I made it to where nothing else is clicked. Lisa Simpson is the only one that's clicked. So now we're going to move the logic forward from here, so I can go ahead and take this test out. That worked exactly like what we wanted it to. So now I'm going to go ahead, if this one is not clicked, if there is something in here, then I don't want to mess around with this. What I want to be able to first question is if the user clicks the same one. So now I'm going to say if the first clicked dot name, based off the names we have in the algorithm, dot name